I hope you've been watching some of the other programs of our London Centre tips, short programs showing you some things that maybe you need reminding of or might be helpful in your church work. Today's tip is about fingering, and before you turn your computer off and say, I don't want to hear about fingering and that's too basic for me, just let me tell you what I've been experiencing. So as I've gotten older, I've played some pieces maybe even dozens of times, and I hadn't marked in the fingering, and I always did it was built into my muscle memory, and I always did the right fingering. And now I'm finding that suddenly I think, what did I use? And it's not falling under my fingers as it once did, and I don't have it marked, and so I have to start all over, and I know that it's not right, and I have to keep fiddling until I find the right fingering. So I would and for the younger players, I would really admonish you to write in your fingering, because you will not only appreciate having it now, but later when you come back to a piece, it makes things so much easier. The other thing I found a little bit is my aging hands don't seem so supple as maybe they once were. And so I need to even change some fingering that I do have marked in, because I can't quite stretch, or it doesn't seem to work as well as it once did. But my main idea for today's tip was, especially in playing hymns, was what I call right hand treble clef, left hand bass clef syndrome. So this is where, and I've seen this so many times with students, if something is written in the treble clef, they play it in the right hand. If it's in the bass clef, they play it in their left hand. And I began to realize, I think this comes from piano playing, where most of us have started, where we have to play all four parts of a hymn in our hands. And so to do that, mostly we need to keep the right hand in the treble and the left hand in the bass. But when we add the feet on the bass part, that really frees up our left hand to be much more involved in the treble clef part. So I really suggest to you, in your fingering of hymns, that you get the left hand playing the alto parts much more than you might have thought of, and not the whole part by any means, but just even one note. And I'm going to demonstrate it in a minute. And often at the start of a hymn or a phrase of a hymn, if you start with the right hand not down low in the tenor range, and it's often marked that way, the low B's and A's sometimes written in the treble clef, the ledger lines, if you let the left hand take those, it frees your right hand to play a longer phrase. So in our fingering, the goal is to keep our hands in one position as long as possible. So we don't have the sustaining pedal in the piano that will help us jump around. So we want, if we're aiming for a legato sound, we want to keep our hands in one position and use substitution a lot. So I've gone through the hymn book and picked some things that I think might be helpful, and I've enlarged them, and Lorraine is going to focus on them, and just to show you what fingering you might use in some of these hymns. So the first hymn, O Worship the King, Hanover, you'll notice I've marked taking the B in your left hand. So if you played it the way it looks and took the B with your right hand, you've already, I would say to my students sometimes, dug yourself in a little bit of a hole, in that you need to substitute and to get your hand up higher, which all the notes in the right hand or in the top voice are going up. And if you will play the B in your left and take the D in the first part of a bar there with your thumb, you can play that whole line without moving your right hand at all. So just let me demonstrate. Fiddling because I had taken the B with my right hand. So just that one little adjustment would make that passage much, much easier. Let's go to the next one, which is Let Us with a Gladsome Mind. And I found this was even more important to start that way because we have that scale in the second bar, in the soprano. So if you played the opening bar with the B flat in your right hand, centered on your thumb, by the time you get to the second bar, you're going to be in a real pickle because you're not going to, your hand is going to be down, centered on B flat, and you've got to go up here, so you're going to run out of fingers. If you take that B flat in your left, so play all the B flats in that first bar in your left hand, the second bar scale will be absolutely no problem. And to help facilitate that, you'll notice I've got the A with my fifth finger and my B flat with my fourth finger. I find this very helpful in many, many passages. We're so used to, it has to be 3, 4, 5. But it's quite easy, or at least I find it easy, to bring my fourth over my fifth in passages, and when my other fingers, as in this case, are involved lower down. So just let me do that again. So my right hand, the lowest note my right hand is going to play in those first two bars is D, middle D. Especially at the beginning of a hymn, you don't want to give yourself difficulties or muck up, because if you do, that's liable to continue. Next is Crown Him with Many Crowns, Diademata. And again, a similar suggestion. So I would play the B flats in the first bar in my left hand, along with the tenor part, but I'd start on my second finger in my right hand, and that will carry through the whole first line. The only note lower than E flat will be then the D, 2 Ds near the end. And of course, with all this emphasis on the fingering in the hands, it helps to get the pedal right, which I didn't do that time. But you'll get the idea. And the next tune is the Ash Grove, Let All Things Now Living. I would suggest you take all the middle C's in the first line and the B flat with the left hand. And then at the end of the line, I'd move to take the last middle C with the right hand, as that suits the next line. And I take the first F in the first full bar in the right hand with the thumb. So the right hand would be centered on the note F. Okay, so again, very little movement of the hands. And I'm probably giving you more examples than I need to, but just two more. Abbott's Lee, God Who Gives to Life Its Goodness. And we're using this tune on Sunday, and when I first went to play it, I mucked up the third bar with the octave, and it made me realize that I needed to adjust my fingering, and that is to play the B and the A in the second bar with my left hand. If you don't do that, then you find yourself playing the C and B in the end of the second bar in your right hand, and I can almost guarantee you're going to miss the octave in the third bar. So I would start with fingers 3 and 5 and then get my left hand involved in the alto part like this. So I tied over the C and you just can't miss it. Otherwise, you very well may miss it. And should you be in the position of singing How Great Thou Art, and this will be my last one. Again, I wouldn't play it the way it looks. I would start with fingers 3 and 5 in the right hand and play the B flats that are written in the treble clef. I'd play those in the left hand. Very simple, no fuss and bother, no having to adjust. So that's my tip for today. I hope you find that helpful. Thank you for tuning in.